Mr. Meyer, first of all, could you introduce the European organization that you are representing in this conference? What about is the European Observatory for Counterfeiting and Piracy?
The European Observatory on Infringement of Intellectual Property Rights, as its name is now, is a part of the Office for Harmonization in the Internal Market, which is the official agency of the European Union, where you can register your trademark and your design right for all the 28 member states of the European Union. So originally, we are a registration office, like the patent office in Munich is for the European patent. We do this for trademarks and designs. We have been doing this for now almost 20 years, and we have a big experience, of course, in intellectual property. This is why the European Commission, when it created the observatory, thought that we would be the good body to implement the policies that they want to implement through the observatory. And there are four things that we're doing. One is studying the economy, looking at the value of intellectual property, really determining on a serious basis how much is the importance of intellectual property in the economy in terms of jobs, gross domestic products, import-export balance, etc., etc. The second is trying to determine and find measures that will allow a better coordination for enforcement authorities, that is customs, prosecutors, the police, and to some extent also the judiciary. So we work with these various enforcement authorities. We try to give them better instruments to do their job, and we train them. Okay? So this is the third thing. Last but not least is the big question in intellectual property of awareness of the consumers. Do they know what intellectual property is? Do they respect intellectual property? Do they like it or not? And that is the third thing. And obviously there is work to be done there. So we will be working on awareness campaigns, as we say, to make sure that European consumers have a more positive approach to intellectual property.
And which are the main tools, legal and others, and the institutions that we have in the EU for the protection and the enforcement of IP?
Why the observatory was created because many various institutions and many various legal instruments actually deal with enforcement of intellectual property, but each and every one on its own way. Customs on its side, police on its side, the judiciary. We have several institutions in Europe which I would say have a role to play in enforcement. First of all, of course, the European Commission. It is lawmaking, it proposes directives, but also some of its Directorates General, like the Directorate General for Customs, is actively involved in coordinating the customs in the European Union. We have Europol, which is the European enforcement agency, I would say, which brings together mainly police, but not only. Some customs are members as well. Eurojust, that's a network of European prosecutors. These are the real European agencies that work on enforcement. With that, you have a number of other more international ones, but of course which have a center of gravity very much in Europe, like Interpol is a very important partner. And all these people try to work together to be more efficient in enforcement of IP, and I would say we are the ones who are invited to coordinate them.
Which are the main issues, the main problems on the field?
There are many. There are many problems on the field, of course. Intellectual property, well, the first thing is that we must indeed coordinate and harmonize the answer. That is the first thing. The second thing is that intellectual property is a complex matter. We need to train people. You cannot just say to a customs officer, enforce this directive, make sure that there are no counterfeits that come in. He will need to understand what he has to do about it. So training is certainly an issue. Last but not least, I mean, of course, intellectual property infringement is something that brings a lot of money to the pirates and the counterfeiters. And more we have found out that these people are actually not isolated people who are just selling some counterfeit products. They are very often part of organized crime and very serious crime at the international level. And this is why Interpol is getting more and more active in the matter. This is why Europol is working a lot on it. Of course, we have to find, I would say, solutions and have the means that correspond to the means of some of these networks of criminals which are very well organized and very powerful. So the power of these people is one. Then, what I said before, if the consumer thinks that he can buy something and that it's a smart purchase, this is the major problem. If consumer would not buy counterfeits, they would not be produced. They're only produced because, of course, it is a good profit and in the end they're easy to sell.
Since you brought the issue of the international level, do we have satisfactory international cooperation, the European Union with other countries, with international bodies, about...
We are certainly doing our best to make sure that we have a good cooperation, and it has been improving very much. We, for example, the OHIM, we have an agreement, a memorandum of understanding with Europol to make sure that we work together. Okay, they give us the data because they are the operational ones. They know what the police has done on the ground, and we will, on that basis, improve the knowledge spreading. The same for Eurojust. We are indeed coordinating, and we have brought together in the observatory all the European agencies involved, plus Europol, plus the World Intellectual Property Organization, to make sure that we know what each other does.
And with countries, what's the situation? Mostly some Asian countries, most of these counterfeiting products come from these countries in Europe.
Well, China is the producer of products, of legal products, but also of illegal ones. So they obviously are number one in counterfeiting. More than 80% of the counterfeits that are stopped at the frontiers by our customs authorities come from China. But not only China, there's a number. Southeast Asia traditionally has been a source of counterfeiting. Some of our neighbors, like in Turkey, there is a lot of counterfeiting production, that's true. And there is some also within the European Union. We know that in some member states, the luxury goods notably are heavily counterfeited. So it is a world problem, really, okay?
In this conference, Mr. Μέερ, an interesting survey was presented upon what you underlined, the importance of public awareness. The results, the conclusions are contradictory. People, they recognize the importance of intellectual property. They agree that they should be rewarded, creators. They understand the connection between innovation, creativity, and revenues from this activity. But in an important percentage, they say that we will, or we already did, a smart purchase of something that is product of counterfeiting, and they even justify ethically what they are doing, because they believe that multinationals, they had many times taken back the value that they have invested, that branded products that are very expensive, it's not something that they can accept. So they even feel well about this thing.
Well, I don't know if they necessarily feel well, but somehow these excuses help them to feel not so bad. Yes, you are very right. You summarized very well the situation. On the one hand, the people know that intellectual property is very important. More than 90% of Europeans say it's important. We need intellectual property. Even more than 60% said that without intellectual property, the economy would be a chaos. But then on the other hand, when it comes to their own attitude, indeed, the people tend to find excuses. They say that they do not actually recognize that they have bought a lot of counterfeit products. There's less than 20% who say that. But more than 40% say it can be a smart purchase. It can actually be a protest purchase for the reasons that you've indicated.
Especially for youngsters.
And especially for youngsters. And this is the big thing and the main worry for us, which is that all these things that we hear in general are much stronger when it comes to youngsters. Be it the purchase of counterfeiting, but even more and more importantly, the illegal downloading from the internet. Young people say that it's only the rich who take advantage of this, and more than 50% of them think that it is legitimate to download when it's for your own purposes. And they find a number of excuses. The legal offer is not good enough. Many people actually think In Greece, 55% of the youngsters think that the illegal offer, so the not legal offer on the internet, is better than the legal one. This, of course, is very preoccupying. Of course, price is always an issue. I mean, we have a major crisis in some countries, and this one knows what the word crisis means. The people have very little means. Of course, they will try to find ways to obtain what they want. And it's true that on the internet, it's all available. You just click, you just download it, you just stream it, and the people therefore very easily go in that direction. So there's a lot of work to be done. A lot of work to be done from the authorities in awareness. But I think also the right holders themselves will have to very deeply reflect on the image that they have in society. Luxury, rich people. Is it really the economy that we want to promote? Or is it not an economy for everybody that we need to have? Should we have a price policy that is this one? Are elements, I do not have to give the answer to that. It is the people who market their products who will have to think of it. Obviously, the associations of right holders and all those who work in the copyright field have worked very hard to make sure that the legal offer is better now at the European level. And if you look, for example, at music, considerable progress has been made over the last 4 or 5 years. You can now find every piece of music in every member state for a legal download in all the countries. The evolution is very quick, okay? It is actually a market equilibrium that has to be found.